Another video, and it looked like Caitlin Clark has landed a huge win against the WNBA and possibly her.
And there she is, on the court, under the brightest lights, with thousands of eyes watching every move, every shot, every breath. The world sees the scoring records, the highlight reels, the moments of triumph. But behind the cheers, behind the flashing cameras, there's a story few are telling. A story of pressure, expectation, and a league on the edge of transformation. Caitlin Clark arrived in the WNBA as a phenomenon, a player who had shattered college records, captured national attention, and promised to change the game for millions of fans. But fame, as always, comes with a price, and the questions began almost immediately. Can the league protect its rising stars? Can the spotlight shine without burning? And what happens when the expectations of millions collide with the realities of a professional sport? Critics, analysts, and fans all have their own versions of the truth. Some call her the savior of women's basketball, the face who could finally bring the WNBA into the global spotlight. Others whisper that the attention, the hype, the pressure may be more than even a prodigy can handle. Social media erupted the moment she stepped onto the professional court, not just for her skill, but for the conversations she sparked. Debates about fairness, opportunity, and representation in the league. Tonight, we step beyond the highlights, beyond the scoring charts and game stats. Tonight, we dive into the story of Caitlin Clark, not just as a player, but as a symbol of the complexities, the struggles, and the quiet battles that play out behind the scenes of women's professional basketball. This is a story of ambition, tension, and the moments that define a league at a crossroads. Because in sports, sometimes the greatest story isn't about who wins or loses. It's about who survives the spotlight and who carries the weight of everyone watching. From the very first game, Caitlin Clark's presence was impossible to ignore. The ball left her hands like lightning, her shots swishing through the net with precision and power that made fans hold their breath. Every court she stepped onto became a stage, every play a statement. The statistics poured in: points, assists, shooting percentages, but numbers alone could never capture the intensity, the electricity she brought to the WNBA. Media outlets instantly seized on her story. Headlines proclaimed the arrival of a generational talent. Analysts debated her potential to reshape the league, to bring new fans, and to redefine what it meant to be a superstar in women's basketball. Social media erupted. Memes, GIFs, and highlight reels circulated across platforms in minutes. Fans argued passionately. Was this the most talented rookie of a generation? The most marketable star the league had ever seen? Yet with the spotlight came scrutiny. Every move was dissected, every misstep magnified. Sports pundits questioned whether a young player, stepping into the pressures of professional competition, could survive the intense expectations. College success did not guarantee professional dominance. Critics argued that the physicality, the mental strain, and the media glare could overwhelm even the most gifted athlete. But Clark pushed forward, game after game, carrying not just her team's hopes, but the expectations of an entire league eager for a new face. Some moments defined her rise. A last-second three-pointer in a nationally televised game. A flawless performance that shut down one of the league's veteran stars. And behind the cheers and applause, a quiet story unfolded. Of late-night practices, relentless training, and the personal sacrifices required to meet a level of excellence few could comprehend. Friends and family described a young woman who, despite the attention and praise, remained grounded, focused, and determined to prove herself not just as a player, but as a force within the league. But the rise of a star is never without tension. Rivalries formed instantly. Between rookies and veterans, teams competing for dominance, and even within fan communities that debated endlessly over talent, media bias, and league dynamics. The stage had been set. Caitlin Clark was no longer just a promising rookie. She was a player capable of changing the narrative of women's basketball. And with that power came attention, adoration, but also pressure, scrutiny, and the beginnings of a storm that was quietly building just beyond the spotlight. Every dribble, every shot, every courtside glance became a test. A measure of not just skill, but resilience. And while fans saw her as unstoppable, behind the scenes, the league, the coaches, and even some teammates began to recognize the ripple effects of her arrival. The question lingered: could the WNBA rise to meet her? Or would the system buckle under the weight of a star so bright, so unprecedented, so disruptive? As Caitlin Clark's star rose, the court beneath her seemed to shift. Every game brought new challenges, not just from opponents, but from the invisible forces shaping professional sports. Observers began to notice patterns, controversial calls, physical matchups that seemed unusually aggressive, and moments that sparked debate across social media and sports networks alike. It wasn't merely the intensity of the league, it was the subtle, persistent tension building around a rookie who had quickly become larger than the game itself. Fans began to speak out. Clips of questionable fouls and disputed calls went viral. Commentators dissected the tiniest of details. Was the refereeing impartial? Was the league prepared for the arrival of a talent this bright? The conversation extended beyond the court. It became a discussion about fairness, equality, and the structures that govern professional women's basketball. Every highlight reel that showcased Clark's brilliance also carried whispers of friction, conflict, and the stress of a league adjusting to unprecedented attention. Veteran players, too, felt the pressure. Some quietly admired her talent. Others resented the media attention she commanded. Locker rooms buzzed with conversation. Admiration mingled with unease. Coaches were caught in the middle, balancing the need to support their star player while navigating the complexities of team dynamics and league expectations. Every decision, every strategy, every substitution became a potential flashpoint, and the tension was palpable in every arena she entered. Off the court, the media amplified the stakes. Headlines questioned not just her skill, but her ability to handle scrutiny, her demeanor, and even her place within the league's evolving culture. Some analysts praised her courage under pressure. Others speculated on whether a rookie could endure the relentless spotlight without faltering. Social media became a storm of opinions. Hashtags celebrating her achievements contrasted with threads critiquing her every move. The duality of adoration and criticism mirrored the duality of the league itself, caught between tradition and change, stability and evolution. Yet, amid the controversy, Clark continued to perform. Each game was an act of resilience, a demonstration of her commitment to excellence. Her statistics soared, her clutch performances made headlines, and the league began to recognize the influence she wielded not just in scoring, but in shaping the narrative of women's professional basketball. But the fractures were growing. The league's systems, designed to maintain order and fairness, were suddenly under scrutiny. Fans debated the integrity of the officiating. Analysts dissected patterns of gameplay and enforcement. Insiders whispered about the pressures placed on young stars navigating an industry that demanded both perfection and endurance. It was a precarious balance. Every triumph on the court carried the weight of expectation. Every misstep was magnified, debated, and dissected. Caitlin Clark, once simply a rising rookie, had become a lightning rod for attention, for scrutiny, and for the league's internal tensions. She embodied both the hope and the anxiety of a sport grappling with rapid change. And the fracture wasn't only visible in media coverage or fan discussion, it was personal. Friends, family, and mentors noticed the toll. Interviews captured glimpses of exhaustion, fleeting moments of doubt, and the relentless focus required to maintain composure under pressure. It was a reminder that behind the scoring records, the highlight reels, and the national attention, There was a human being, a young woman navigating the collision of talent, expectation, and controversy on the grandest stage of her career. The WNBA was at a crossroads. The rise of Caitlin Clark was a triumph for the sport, but also a test of its resilience, fairness, and adaptability. The league had been forced to confront questions it had long avoided. How does it manage talent that challenges the status quo? How does it balance visibility with protection, opportunity with equity, and most importantly, could it support its rising star without fracturing under the weight of attention, scrutiny, and expectation? In the shadows of arenas and behind the flashing lights, the fracture widened. The storm was building, and Caitlin Clark stood at the center. Brilliant, resilient, and unyielding, but also navigating a world that demanded perfection and, at the same time, threatened to punish any human imperfection. The court is bright, the cameras flashing, but some battles remain unseen. Behind the cheers and statistics lies a quieter, more complex struggle, one shaped not by skill alone, but by identity, economics, and the unspoken hierarchies of a professional league. Caitlin Clark's rise illuminated these hidden tensions, revealing questions that had lingered in the background for years. From the outset, Clark's visibility made her an anomaly. She arrived in a league celebrated for its diversity. Yet she also represented a convergence of factors that drew unprecedented attention. Media hype, marketability, and a young white player breaking records in a space historically dominated by black athletes. It wasn't about blame or controversy, but about awareness. Her emergence highlighted disparities in representation, media coverage, and fan engagement that the league had navigated quietly for decades. Conversations that once existed only in locker rooms and private discussions were now being broadcast on national media and social platforms. Money added another layer of pressure. Clark's games sold out, her jersey became a top seller, and sponsors took notice. Analysts reported that her presence alone drove significant spikes in viewership. In one notable instance, her debut home game drew record attendance, surpassing league averages by nearly 30%. The financial potential she represented was immense, yet it also placed a weight on the league and its leadership. How to balance profitability with fairness, exposure with ethics, and hype with equity. Then there was the media pressure. Every interview, every highlight, every public appearance was dissected. Headlines questioned not only her performance, but her demeanor, her tone, her decisions, the way she carried herself under scrutiny. Analysts debated her impact, not just as a player, but as a cultural figure, a symbol of the changing landscape of women's basketball. Social media amplified the tension, creating a digital echo chamber where praise and criticism collided, often in the most public and personal ways. Yet the league itself faced its own internal challenges. Coaches, executives, and referees were suddenly navigating uncharted territory. They had to manage not only games and training, but the ripple effects of Clark's influence. How her presence reshaped competitive dynamics, altered fan expectations, and even shifted sponsorship priorities. It was a reminder that talent, while celebrated, can also be disruptive, not because of intent, but because of the magnitude of its impact. Clark herself felt the weight of these hidden pressures. Away from the arenas, sources close to her described long hours of practice, intense preparation, and constant mental calibration. She was learning to handle not just opponents on the court, but the scrutiny of an entire league, the expectations of fans, and the invisible metrics of success that determined perception as much as performance. Every step forward was a triumph. Every misstep carried amplified consequences. And amid all this, subtle tensions surfaced in ways few could see. Conversations about fairness and equity, previously quiet and internal, now spilled into public discourse. Fans debated patterns of officiating. Analysts speculated on structural inequalities. Even teammates acknowledged that the attention Clark brought sometimes created unease, not from jealousy, but from the awareness of how powerful, disruptive, and transformative her presence had become. This was the hidden tension, a collision of identity, economics, and media pressure. Caitlin Clark was more than a player. She was a catalyst. Her rise forced the league to confront questions it hadn't fully answered. How do you nurture extraordinary talent while preserving fairness? How do you manage the financial and cultural impact of a star who changes the game simply by existing? And, most importantly, how does a young player navigate the complex intersection of performance, identity, and expectation without losing herself along the way? The answers were far from clear. And as Clark stepped onto the court night after night, she carried not just the ball. She carried the weight of a league, a fan base, and a culture in flux. Every shot, every pass, every moment became an expression not just of skill, but of resilience, courage, and the unspoken pressures that define professional sports. The hidden tension was there, beneath every highlight reel, behind every media headline, and as the league continued to evolve around her, Clark remained at the center, a force of talent, determination, and the emotional gravity of a story far larger than herself. The applause fades, the cameras blink, and in the quiet moments between games, the weight of expectation becomes undeniable. Caitlin Clark's journey, once celebrated as meteoric and inspiring, now carries the subtle cracks of tension. The spotlight that had elevated her also magnified every challenge. Questionable calls, media scrutiny, and the relentless gaze of fans and critics alike. Social media became a battleground. Highlights of her spectacular plays went viral, but so did controversial moments. Analysts debated everything from her defensive matchups to coaching decisions, sometimes questioning her composure under pressure. Hashtags surged, opinions collided, and fans debated not just performance, but fairness. It was as if the very visibility that made her a star also exposed her to scrutiny impossible to escape. Even the locker room reflected the strain. Teammates admired her talent, but whispers circulated about the pressures her rise placed on everyone around her. Coaches were caught in the middle, striving to maintain team cohesion while responding to the demands of a league suddenly reshaped by one rookie's influence. Every strategy, every substitution became a potential flashpoint. The game was no longer just a competition of skill. It was a test of endurance, resilience, and the ability to navigate complex interpersonal and institutional dynamics. Off the court, Clark grappled with the personal toll. Late nights, endless interviews, and media attention created an emotional landscape as challenging as any defensive play. Friends described moments of doubt, fleeting but powerful, tempered by her determination to stay focused, to persevere, to rise above the noise. She was navigating an environment that demanded perfection while exposing every human vulnerability. An impossible tightrope walked in the public eye. The WNBA itself faced an inflection point. Fans debated league policies, the fairness of officiating, and structural inequities. Analysts raised questions about media bias and narrative framing, and the cultural conversation surrounding women's professional sports intensified. In every arena, every broadcast, every news segment, the league confronted a question it could no longer ignore. How does a system respond when a single player becomes both a cultural symbol and a focal point of public scrutiny? And yet, Clark pressed forward. Each game became an act of defiance, each point a statement of resilience. She wasn't just playing for stats, she was proving the power of perseverance amid scrutiny, media pressure, and the invisible demands of a league in transition. Her rise sparked broader conversations about fairness, equity, and the evolving identity of women's basketball. Fans celebrated, analysts debated, and the league faced questions it could no longer ignore about officiating, media coverage, and player well-being. Clark remains a symbol of focus and determination, navigating the delicate balance of stardom while staying grounded. Her journey challenges the league to evolve, ensuring extraordinary talent can thrive fairly and safely. The question now isn't whether she will succeed, it's whether the WNBA, its fans, and its culture will rise to meet the challenges she illuminates. The spotlight remains, the conversation continues, and her story is far from over.
Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into Hollywood's hidden history.